Welcome to the Blue Room Weekly, and after after a highly emotional week, where we've watched all the videos, we've seen all the footage, we've seen everything that last day at Goodison has to offer. What better way to have a weekly where I'm joined by the one and only Rob Vera. Rob, welcome once again to the weekly. How are you, my friend?
Hey, was doing well. I feel like first of all, that's a way better introduction than I probably get out of everyone else at the Blue Room. So you guys should take some notes. That's how it's done. No, I'm doing well, man. I'm in the midst of my own I don't know, spring sporting gauntlet right now. You had the weekend, you have the final match at Goodison. Later that day, there was a Game 7 semi-final between my team, the Thunder, and the Denver Nuggets, and then we had Game 1 of the conference finals last night, and then I got my hockey team is in the conference finals too. I mean, I got a lot of good stuff going on, but my brain is overloaded with sports at a time where work is certainly taking up a big part of my brain. So mostly just tired. I imagine that's not too dissimilar from how emotionally, the impact of how everyone over there feels right now in terms of just being sort of emotionally spent by everything that's been going on. But just happy to be on to talk, and certainly happy to talk about the final Sunday at Goodison, which certainly for me, I have a very different perspective just because I was sitting and watching it on my couch at home. Obviously envious that I couldn't be there, but what a beautiful, poignant occasion, eh?
Yeah, when we were talking about possibly getting you on tonight, you very humbly said, "Oh, you don't want me on because I wasn't there. You need people who shared the experience on Sunday." And for me, it was quite the opposite. I'm really interested to get your perspective on Sunday. We're hoping that Pete Mack will join us a bit later on because Pete, as everyone listens knows, has played such a big part this season as a member of the 1878s, and he had a rather, let's say, risky job on Sunday with his things that he had to do. And if Pete manages to make it onto the show, I'll let him tell the story about how his Sunday went. But normally on the weekly, Rob, what I like to do is, I know Blue Monday and the byline cover much of the previous weekend's game, and I like to tend to focus on the preview of the next game coming up. And of course, we do have one final game, which has kind of got lost in the midst of all of what's happened on the previous Sunday. But we do play Newcastle in our final game of the season, which we will talk about and we will mention a little bit later on because, we're still Everton. We've still got a league campaign to complete. So we will talk about that and we will mention that. But the magnitude of what Sunday was and just how everything felt on Sunday. And if listeners and yourself won't mind, I will go into a little bit of detail from my perspective of what I felt on Sunday. I think it's important we document this because who knows, maybe in 10, 15 years' time, if podcasts are still a thing and, people want to recount Sunday's events, they can come back and listen in years to come. And I'd like to document, certainly from both of our perspectives, what happened. But just for yourself, Rob, and you've mentioned there the fact that you were up early Sunday morning in the States. You are 6 hours behind. Yeah, you're 6 hours behind what is British summertime over here. And you yourself said your goodbyes to Goodison earlier in the season when you were over for a trip and you saw the Villa game and the Tottenham game, the two home games we had. And I recount at the time you emotionally yourself saying your goodbyes and what you had to say, and not just about the game itself, but I suppose recounting all the trips that you've had at Goodison yourself down the years. And it was our opportunity to do that on Sunday for the people who were there for one more time. The Sunday just gone. But from your point of view, Rob, from watching it behind the screen, because we know there was a huge international audience. We know that there was so many people invested, both nationally and internationally, what happened at Goodison Park on Sunday. Just from your perspective, how did it look on the TV? How did it play about to the American audience? Did it come across that Everton were kind of a big deal on Sunday? And what was the reaction, I suppose, from your perspective, as I mentioned, but also from stateside as well?
Well, it's much as I will say in terms of the optics, as much as I'm sure everyone wasn't necessarily thrilled initially with the idea of a noon Sunday kickoff for the final Goodison match. I have to say that the weather was, at least on television, it just looked exceptional. It made the occasion, I think, in a lot of ways um, feel poignant and celebratory in a way that I think was very fitting for a final match at Goodison. I mean, you can, of course, I think that we can think of so many of the signature matches over the years that people who were there on Sunday and their parents and their grandparents and their great grandparents attended, whether those be your Saturday 3 p.m. kickoffs, or of course the very kind of trademark under the lights at Goodison experiences. But I honestly thought that being up stupid early aside, I thought what it looked like on television was certainly great. I do think, and again, I only get unless I'm over, I only get sort of the perspective of the way in which our networks here broadcast Premier League football, and the little subtle nuance differences. I think the comms team was the same. I think we had the same comms team, but we had some different coverage in terms of like halftime and pre-match. Because I think we had Peter Drury, I think, was calling the game over. At least that's the feed that we got. But in terms of did it come across as a big deal? I think it certainly did, and I want to credit NBC Sports for, and I've been critical of them over the years at times for feeling as if, especially in the early days when the Premier League broadcasting over here was getting popular, of too much focus on the same old predictable, quote, big six, as if there was a league of six sides and that everyone else was just fodder for them. They did a really good job kind of counting down over the last several weeks, that hey, we're down to our third to last match at Goodison, our second to last. There was a lot of reverence, I think, and kind of attention paid to the idea that this stadium and this club, which are so intertwined in their histories, that this time was winding down. That was something very special. I think it's important to remember that, for an American audience, hearing about a professional team playing at the same stadium since the 1890s, that may not sound that old to you all, but it sounds to us, it's like, wow, that's a long time, because that's right up there. And Warren, you're a baseball fan. That is right up there with the way in which we view Wrigley Field or Fenway Park. Baseball is the closest thing in terms of like historical longevity to the way that we kind of compartmentalize in our heads, the Premier League experience in terms of those historical terms. But I thought they did a great job. I think that what people could really take away from the game, was from the game itself, is maybe somewhat limited, but I think it was the way in which the camera continued to capture throughout the match shots of the audience, shots of, like really kind of poignantly reminding you at every step of there. Like the broadcast team was doing a lot to talk about the great history of not only of Goodison, but of the club and of the great games that were there. Having commentators broadcasting the game who had been doing this a long time, recounting, you had Leon Osman on there too. And so you had a lot of that really nice balance between sort of the kind of national English perspective, the American perspective, and then having Leon Osman, I think, was the perfect touch on there for our audience too. And again, don't know what the TV audience got over there, but I thought they made it into a real event and a moment. Where I was disappointed was not in normal coverage, but we were sort of, we didn't get, they had another match coming on after. And so there wasn't this time to broadcast the whole post, like the whole celebration program that was there. The YouTube feed, I guess, as you probably saw online, the TNT Sports YouTube feed kept going up and down, and I gave up on it at a certain point because I figured, well, I just thought they're not going to, this feed's never coming. So I figured I'd wait until the club later in the day, which of course Everton did. They put out highlights and those sorts of things. I haven't even watched it all yet, Warren, and that's not because I don't care. It's because I think I still need a little time to kind of like, I want to sort of savor it a little more, if it sounds weird. And really, I was surprised I didn't get a little more emotional on Sunday, but I think, Warren, to that point, I had already said my goodbye when I was there in January. I was very intentional about savoring every moment I was there. It was my last time. You probably heard me on post-match welling up and crying like a little baby, after the Spurs match. And you know what? I didn't care. I thought it was so beautiful to have that time for myself. And so by the time we get to Sunday, I think I was just able to take it in. And really what captured me the most was less about the feeling of Goodison saying goodbye. And it was more about all of the friends I knew were at Goodison at that moment, and thinking about, them, thinking about all the people that I've met in my 6 or 7 now trips over to Merseyside, and the way I have been treated consistently as being so welcomed, being embraced as part of a family. I feel like a true Evertonian. I feel welcomed and embraced by local Evertonians. But I've always acknowledged, and I think Sunday was another example of it, that there's still something that I can never completely be part of, because living there, having season tickets, having your multiple generations before you have those tickets, like that stuff is something that I have an immense respect and admiration for. And so the overwhelming feeling for me was just, I was in awe of the occasion, because I knew how much it meant to people that I cared about and who have been so generous with me. And that, at the end of the day, Warren, has been the greatest part about my 2-decade plus journey as an Everton supporter, has been the community. And Sunday, as much as it is about a stadium, it's like what the old saying about churches. A church is just a building, but what makes it a holy place is the people inside of it. Goodison, for all of its its history, that history is because of us, because of you, because of those of us who have attached ourselves and built a true community from the roots of this football club. And so to me, that's why Sunday was so special.
It's so interesting hearing you talk about, because I recount a conversation actually I had later on Sunday evening, when we were talking actually about international fans. And one of the things we were saying is that there's obviously a lot of camaraderie and a lot of stick given to Liverpool fans, Man United fans, these clubs who have quote unquote tourist fans. And these people who I call Anfield Disneyland, for instance, as a way of mocking them, I suppose, because it's it's a day out at somewhere where you can take pictures and buy merchandise. And one of the things we were saying about fans such as yourself is, why would you support Everton? You've got a whole list, and I know you've gone through this story before, your personal story, but fans like you, why'd you put yourself through this stress? And I think to us who are locals, or have the family history, or have the season tickets, or have the local area entrenched in us, we resonate with you, because you're like, well, you don't have to have. So we had that conversation actually on Sunday. So it's so interesting hearing you say that. But what I tried to do, and I do have to make a little apology. It's my first appearance on a show on the Blue Room since Sunday, and I really felt that I had to be a part of the post match. I don't usually do post match, because the lads all go back to the Denby afterwards for home games, and normally I'm with a few of my friends and my mates afterwards in some of the local pubs in Walton. And I really wanted to be a part of post match, and as I say, I was just a blubbering mess all day, and I couldn't hold it in when I was talking about what was the emotion of the day. But what I really wanted to do, Rob, I did have people like yourself in mind. I had people who maybe, people who I've never met or don't even know, but are maybe listening to us and trying to catch the essence of what the day was. And I really tried to get that across as best as I could. And even tonight, those of you I don't think we get many people watch on YouTube, but the people who are watching maybe on YouTube, and even if you're listening, I'm wearing the scarf that Everton gave us, that Everton left on the seats on Sunday. And it was just amazing to see so many people wearing these scarves on Sunday night. But I really tried, as I say, to get that feeling across of how it was to be at that stadium, because let's have it right. There was millions probably who wish they could have been there, like yourself,
Oh,
who couldn't be
thousands.
there. But was there a moment for you, Rob? Lots of people have talked about the fact that There She Goes was played before kickoff. Lots of people have talked about the violin being playing Z Cars, which was so poignant. I've heard so many people talking about the Toffee Gale walking across the pitch when the violin was getting played as well. And all these moments, and I've watched all the videos that you can watch back, you know, the Access Goodison video, everything else you can watch, and I'm just still going through these waves of emotions, even 4 or 5 days on, whatever it is. Was there a moment for you that was particularly poignant, or particularly where you watched them, whether or not you got emotional, got upset yourself, that you watched and you went, that for me is special. That for me is so iconic. That for me is a moment that myself or maybe many others will never forget. Is there a standout one for you from Sunday?
From Sunday, man, I don't know if there was one particular moment. I think that for me, I was just sort of taking it in. I did find myself getting a little, I know I said that I primarily kind of got my closure and my goodbye out of the way in January, which, by the way, was when I thought the stadium was going to be bulldozed. And so I think that kind of changes it a little bit. I don't think it makes it any less special now, but I think it changes that maybe slightly in terms of how you process it. I will say that in the second half, there was a point where, I think about how many times I'd watched a game at Goodison, and how many times it's probably just the nature of the kind of football we've watched over the course of time, especially for those of us of a certain age, where you feel like the clock is moving way too slow. Whereas on Sunday, it just suddenly occurred to me that I felt like I wish they would add 20 minutes on. I wish they would add 30 minutes on. Like it hit me at some point, probably about 20 minutes into the second half. I just looked at the clock and I just had a moment where it just suddenly it felt real in a way, that this was no longer just this thing we were building up to. But I mean, I think there were little quiet moments like that where it kind of hit me. I think I noted once that I found myself, I thought, am I getting teary-eyed? Is this allergies? Is this something? But I definitely felt it a little bit. The game itself was, I honestly thought we were just going to sort of run away and hide and win 6-0 or something crazy like that. But it ended up being a pretty basic 2-0 game that, it almost just feels like the second or third or fourth most important, fifth most important part of Sunday. But no, I think it was just kind of the sum total of those things. I think it was also, I will tell you, and this is a credit to the camera work, Warren, and I'm sure that you talk about your emotions. They did a great job of flashing to the audience at a time where you would see people of all ages you could see them weeping openly. You could see them getting emotional. And this is in the middle of a relatively nondescript second half match that doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of the league or anything. I think people were all sort of processing it in their own ways. And I think seeing it, and I think if you ask me, is there one moment, I'd say no. But what I would say is that it ended up being less about any of the football or anything happening on the pitch and more about just seeing the faces of the audience, of the crowd. I have never seen a broadcast, by the way, because I think you asked, like, did people watching it over where we are maybe understand the gravity? If you don't follow Everton, maybe you can't fully understand the gravity, but I will tell you that I've never seen a Premier League football match that I've ever watched where there was such an intentional practice of going from the pitch into the crowd and just taking random shots of people, not, in different parts of the stadium, two people together, lots of fathers and daughters, mothers and sons, fathers and sons, anything you can imagine. I feel like I saw all of it. And to me, that was humanity on display in a way that's beautiful, and it's in a way that I don't think we should take for granted. At the end of the day, Goodison is a special place, but it's a special place because of us. Everton is, for all of its frustrations. You said yourself, and like, why are people like me fans of Everton? Like, why would we put ourselves through this? I mean, there's a lot of funny responses I can give to that. I can tell you about all my frustrations with certain players and, you know, results and things and refereeing and the Premier League corruption and all that shit over the years. But if you, at the end of the day, it boils down to this: being a part of Everton is beautiful. It is one of the most beautiful parts and aspects of my life that I wouldn't trade for anything. And that includes knowing everything I know about what this 20 years is going to be like in terms of results and in terms of, you know, the ups and downs of everything. Because what makes Everton beautiful is I think, a very special brand of unfiltered, raw, genuine humanity that, for all of its occasional ugliness, is characterized most by its unity and its love for its community. To me, that is what makes Everton beautiful. And that's what makes Goodison Park and the occasion on Sunday so special. That's really what hit me most. It was just the kind of the collective, you know, collection of all of those thoughts kind of hitting me at once about how lucky I am to be an Everton supporter. And on a day like Sunday, especially in the context of now going to a beautiful new stadium with hope on the rise and a new ownership, I didn't want to do the thing where I just thought about tomorrow. I just wanted to be there in the moment today and say, man, right now it's a great time to be an Everton fan. But if I'm really honest, it's always been great. Believe it or not, it's always really, even with all of the things that sucked, it's always been great, if you think about it, to be part of Everton.
Do you know what? I'm apologising there for earlier on for getting emotional on the post match, and with the reasonable normality of everyday life kicking in since Tuesday anyway, since, you know, we're recording on a Wednesday evening UK time now, and since Tuesday I've been back to work, and, you know, I've got on with the job and everyday life and whatever, and I thought to myself, you know, I'm over it to a degree now. I'll still watch and get, you know, teary-eyed or misty-eyed about it, and you recounting that then has got me going again, and it's just brought it all back. And I think it'll be some time before all of us truly feel that time when we can talk about it without feeling our chest tighten and our eyes getting misty and more, you know, moist at the thought of what we witnessed. And I think one of the things, you know, as I said earlier, I wanted to get that feeling across, but I really wasn't sure, Rob, about how. I wasn't sure how the day would particularly go, and I wasn't sure exactly what to expect. I knew that I was going to be upset. I knew that I was going to be, you know, sad at leaving the stadium, but I didn't know how the collective would be, the collective feeling of the fans and the collective emotion and the collective togetherness. And what you've described so well there is the way that what you could see on the TV screen was that came across in ways on the TV screen at times. But just to give you an idea of my day, when I arrived about 9 a.m. In the morning, and it was already busy. It already started getting busy, and we headed to Goodison Road with the idea of seeing the coach come down Goodison Road, and
that was cool.
You just felt it getting more and more busy, and you just felt it getting more and more, and not in a worrying way at all, by the way. It was just, everyone was just very happy, and for all the sadness and emotion we talked about, it was just some of the happiest groups of people to be around all day, and different people all day. And it was just, Pete McFarlane joins us now, and I'm going to ask Pete about his experiences of the day shortly, but Pete will understand what I mean by this, in the sense that it was just that it's going to sound cliche, but it was just that whole Scouse humour and Scouse wit that was just there all day, and everyone was just so friendly. And behind us, I heard the chorus of boos, and I wondered why people were booing. And it turns out it was Richard Masters who was in the game. Obviously, the Premier League chief executive, and rightly so. He got some boos, and he got some choice words said to him. But initially, someone whispered, "Oh, it's Southampton fans coming down, and that's why they're getting booed." And I was a bit like, "Oh, there's no need for that. You know, it's not about them today." And my fears of something like that were quickly put to rest, because I then marched down when they announced that the Goodison Road coach welcome was not going to happen because it was just too busy. We walked down, headed down towards the Spello, and crowds starting to disperse in a little bit, and it was still absolutely rammed everywhere, but it was a little bit, you had a little bit more freedom to move. And there was about 6 Southampton fans walked past or walking towards us, and there was a couple of Blues in front of me who just said, "Welcome, lads, enjoy Goodison and welcome." And I just thought that was just the theme of the day, really. Everyone was just so pleased and so happy to share the experience. And from there, we were outside the Spello then, and they had a DJ on, and the DJ was playing all music. It was like being in Spain, or like being on holiday in Ibiza or somewhere. And then we took the decision to get into the ground early because we didn't want to miss, any chance we had of not making kickoff. So we got in early, a lot earlier than we usually did. And I sit in the upper sat. God, even that's horrible to sound. I sat in the upper Gladys, past tense. And the upper Gladys was on one, as was the rest of the ground. Pete, a lot of people would have seen your mug on Access Goodison, and you got a hero's reception, and rightly so, when you and the rest of the 1878 walked on the pitch at half time. But I just want to ask you about your day, because you had a quite perilous journey to start off your day, didn't you? Do you want to tell everyone listening a little bit about it?
When you said a hero's reception, I thought you meant when I was going up the ladder. It was I started the day off on the hot walk roof. Started the day off on the hot walk roof. We were down there for a bit, just by like where the traffic lights are outside the Dixie Dean, and we were all meeting there. And then we were waiting on someone to get back to us about a ladder, whether we could actually get up there to take our flags up. And at about 9:45, I think it was, and by that point the whole place was absolutely rammed. But I got this like panicked Katie coming over to me saying, "You need to come with me now. We need to get you on the roof." So I had to go up this roof, this ladder. And I'm not bad with heights, I'll be honest with you. I'm all right with heights. I'm all right getting up and down ladders. But this ladder was like that, right? It was not the safest angle to be going up onto a roof. I'll be honest with you, but there wasn't any space really to do it any differently. And I had a bag on my back. Special thank you to all the Blues who reminded me that I was under a lot of pressure not to die. Who were giving me the oh as I was going up. But yeah, managed to get up there, and then when I got up there, the view. I mean, even from down at street level, if you like, it looked like there was a lot of people. From that roof, it was a sea. I described it as a sea of blue. You literally could not see the end of the crowd, and that was from the roof. It was absolutely incredible. It was probably one of the most incredible sights I've ever seen in my life. And to be honest, it was that sort of, I was kind of awestruck by it that much. I didn't even take that many photos or videos or anything of it because I was just too busy, just like taking it all in.
Everyone else was anyway, Pete. I mean, that was the thing, is that I can't imagine there's ever going to be a greater photography day in the history of Everton than what we saw Sunday. Because the photos and the video that have come out of that. And it almost gives you the freedom to be like, you know what? I don't have to worry about taking every photo today because they're going to be everywhere for sure.
That was it, yeah. And it was so nice. And then I always love like looking back at things as well and seeing like those moments. And it's really funny when you see like compilation videos. And then I've like spotted myself on the roof. Like there's a really boss like called Lewis Guy who's done like different video clips and loads of different photos, and he was just underneath where the hot walk is, and it was hard to describe. The moment when the coach sort of went past on the opposite side of the road and all the blue smoke went off, I couldn't see my feet. And bear in mind, I'm stood on the edge of a roof at this point. It was, I couldn't see. I was just like sort of stood there hoping for the best, and I wasn't just gonna like walk off the edge. But going into the stadium as well, the whole day was just absolutely incredible, and what a send off for Goodison Park. The atmosphere inside the stadium was amazing. I couldn't actually get down Goodison Road at first. I had to walk all the way down to County Road and back up because you just couldn't move. But when I got into the stadium, it was just absolutely incredible.
That was another thing on the screen, by the way, Warren, on the screen when I was watching the game on TV. Now, I've been in Goodison several times now for games. I swear to you, more people got into that stadium than they had room. It felt like every inch of that place was 2 people deep. And again, I'm probably wrong. I don't have any actual evidence to back this up, but I'm telling you that feeling that Ped describes on just can't even get down Goodison Road is sort of the general feeling I got even just watching it on TV, was just how packed. It's like every inch of that space that could be taken up by a human being to watch this game was there.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Absolutely. And I mean, I'd hate to try and go on. Sorry, Peter. I was just going to say, I'd hate to try and estimate how many people were actually there that day. It was well over the 40,000 that were inside the stadium. It was just, excuse me. It was just incredible. And I think what I really want to try and emphasize tonight is I think once everyone was in, and I said, Pete, I'm wearing my scarf tonight that they give us in the stadium, and this is going to be a keepsake forever. And what was just so wonderful is after the game, and even during the game as well, you just saw everyone with the scarves, and it was a wonderful visual. And where I sat in the upper Goodison, looking to my left, where I'm just behind the goal, and just looking at the wave of people, and everyone took the opportunity to wear these scarves, and everyone, no one put theirs under the seat or put them away in a bag or whatever. Everyone wore them, and then it was a great visual. And then afterwards as well, we leave the stadium, and I'd gone on to a few pubs and whatever, and then we went to a few pubs in Walton Vale and a different few things, and I've heard stories about town just being absolutely jam-packed with Evertonians everywhere, and the one image throughout the whole evening was just people with the scarves. And when they announced that they were going to leave a scarf on every chair, I didn't think much of it. I thought it was a nice touch, but I didn't think much of it. And just seeing the amount of people with the scarf around the neck or around the wrist, or there were so many people tying it around their heads and stuff like that. It was wonderful because you realised that it was a celebration. And I'm sure you might have seen both of you the video, and I've absolutely adored this video. I must have watched it about 30 times this week. But if there was a video that summed up for me just what a celebration it was, and I suppose what the atmosphere generated, was the video of the lad who brought his own DJ set, DJ decks and speaker down by the brick, and he's playing the song, and the fellas on the roof taking his top off, dancing, and everyone's just partying and having a great time. And I just thought, wow, it was like a festival. It was a festival feel. As you said earlier, Rob, the sun was shining. Everyone was just happy. And I think the results in some ways it didn't really matter. But obviously great that we got the victory, and great that we won, and we left Goodison on a real high, 2-0 clean sheet, that sort of thing. But the whole day and the whole experience, I came away on Monday and I felt I just want to relive it again. And it was such a unique moment, and it'll never happen again, because we're in this stadium now for at least another 150 years, so it'll never happen again for us anyway in our lifetime. And it was a one-off, and I just want to take this opportunity for what it's worth, and for people listening, to just say how proud I am to be an Evertonian, because the day passed without a hint of trouble. Everyone was fantastic. The police themselves have commented on the fact that how brilliant the crowd was and how brilliant everyone was. And it was, like you mentioned again earlier, Rob, fans, young, old, mums, dads, nieces, aunties, nephews, and even little things like when on the Access Goodison video, the toffee lady, who she was getting all emotional, and the mum or someone asked if the 3 little girls could have a picture with her. And I looked at that, and another thing again, when I just started welling up, because I just thought that's what it's all about. It's been said so many times, but it's about the people. And one of the things I will miss, and I'm sure we will take this to the new ground, of course we will. It'll take a bit of time to get used to, but one of the things I will miss is what that ground built up in 133 years of it being the people. And that was a huge celebration Sunday night of the people. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful day. If I could come back to you momentarily, Pete, before I go back to Rob with talking about the game at the weekend in the future. What was that moment like on the pitch at half time? You've gone out there with the 1878. I'm so thrilled that you got asked to go on there and get the round of applause that you and the guys thoroughly deserved. And I'm so made up for you as a mate of mine.
Well done.
You got
well
that
done.
opportunity, but you've done something. Yeah, absolutely. You've done something that all of us would have killed to do. and that was to be a part of that on the pitch during that time. Just tell us finally from that perspective how that moment was. And I asked Rob earlier it's a two-parter really, this one. I asked Rob earlier what was his most poignant thing from the day. What was that experience like at half-time? And for you, what was the most poignant thing, if you could pick one? I'm sure there's many from Sunday for you.
Well, I think first of all, it was I had to leave my seat at 30 minutes to go and get round to the park end to then get brought back down to go down the tunnel. So I had to actually leave the stadium and walk down Goodison Road, escorted by stewards. And when you said before about how many people were outside, I had to walk through them, and my God, there was a big crowd outside. But yeah, it was incredible. It was such a I won't. It's a moment I'll never forget in my entire life, and I think it's probably something my dad won't ever forget either. Because my dad was in the crowd in the stands, and he's the first person that turned around and looked at when I stepped out. We only found out a couple of days earlier that was going to happen as well. And I didn't like one of. I don't really. It might seem random considering I do like podcasts and I do things like that, but I'm not particularly very good with like attention, if you know what I mean. And thanks. I'm one of those people. If someone gets me a present, I feel really uncomfortable. Do you know what I mean? So that was like really like it was mind blowing for me, and to see how many people were so the lovely reception we got was absolutely breathtaking. It was amazing. That was such a proud moment, and I'm getting upset just thinking about it. To be honest with you, it was incredible. And to be honest, it was one of those things where you step out. I mean, how many times have we been into Goodison Park and we've seen it hundreds of times empty when we've been doing these setups and everything, but to just turn around and see how many everyone wearing blue, everyone applauding, and everyone sort of giving us that kind of reception. I think it really did. It hit me right in the heart. It really did. It really meant the world to me. And I say I'm getting upset just thinking about it. But one thing I would say about us as well is that there's 8 of us who walked out onto that pitch, but we were walking out there on behalf of everyone who's out, everyone who's volunteered, everyone who's donated, and everyone who's given up their time to help with it, because the 8 of us might organise it, but it's everyone else getting involved that make these things happen. So it's another thank you to everyone else who's done everything with us and been with us along the way. And it's not always been plain sailing at the start, especially. I think a lot of people, weren't enamored with the idea of doing these flag displays. But I think as it's gone on, I think people have realised that there's no sort of egos, and it's not about ego. It's not about sort of putting yourself on a pedestal or anything like that. It's actually just about being a collective. And I think that's the main thing I'll take away from this season and last as well. But my most poignant moment, probably my favourite moment other than stepping out onto the pitch, I think it was when just before Z-Cars, well, we had There She Goes, which was that was just unbelievable, blew my mind that. But I think it was when the poet, the spoken poetry guy who and he spoke this thing before Z-Cars, and my dad just put his arm around me, and I've been really good up until that point. I hadn't cried once all week, all for the whole time that we've been doing all this. I hadn't cried once. As soon as I felt my dad's hand on my shoulder, that was it. I was gone. I got my sunglasses back out and put them back on, and it was just. I don't think I've stopped crying since, to be honest. But I think that's what I'm going to miss the most. Although we're going to be stood next to each other in the new stadium, I think me and my dad have had that same spot, those same 2 seats for 27 years, and been surrounded by the exact same people and the same stewards, and had the same routine. And that's, I think, what I'm going to miss the most. Although, yeah, like you said before, we take the people with us, don't we? And hopefully we can make Bramley-Moore our home and make new memories.
I'm well enough again here. I said to Rob earlier, I thought I was over the worst of it. I'm well enough just there in that, Pete, to be honest with you. We'll quickly move on before I start making a show of myself on the podcast again and crying all over the place. But Rob, just to ask you then, we have got another game on Sunday. Kind of got lost in all the myths of talking about last Sunday, but we do face Newcastle, and we're guaranteed 13th place, which I know in itself is not something to shout about or ride home about, but I think considering where the club was back in January, I think it is an achievement to get to 13th position. And we face a Newcastle side who are riding high, obviously, and looking for that Champions League spot. And I think regardless of what we think of Newcastle as a club, and I know it's been sort of a built-up rivalry in recent years with Everton, they've done fantastic, and Eddie Howe's built a really good team there. And I suppose, first of all, a preview of the game, what you want to see, what you hope to see, and then following that, Rob, just to finish us off, what is now the hope for Everton for the future? I mean, I spoke to Matt on post-match and I said, this ground has to be the catalyst, and if there's ever a time to be positive about Everton, you've got to be positive at some point, because otherwise, what's the point in supporting a team if you can't hope for something? If you've got no hope ever, there's no point in supporting them. So if there's a time to be hopeful and wish for the best, it's now. So the two-parter to finish off for you, Rob. Sunday, anything in particular you'd like to see? Comments on us finishing 13th and what that represents for Everton, and then your hopes going into the new stadium and for the future.
Very quickly on Sunday, I mean, I am the longtime voice, and I've been saying this for years and years, that whenever we have a season like this where you have you have a run in where you're safe and there's nothing really of consequence to get, that I want to take advantage of. I want to treat that like a resource and learn about players that we don't know much about, in terms of, because we got, everyone keeps talking about it. We got a ton of decisions to make this summer. I assume many of them have already been made to a large degree. But a Premier League game and 90 minutes of Premier League football, those are valuable minutes that I frankly I expect, just because I know how this works. I'm sure we're going to give all the old guys, who are leaving, one more role out there. I'm sure, maybe it's Keenan Young in the defense. I don't know. I'd prefer it to be something, a little bit different. But at the end of the day, I don't expect much on Sunday, just because Newcastle, I think, if I recall, are really motivated to win based on, trying to lock up a Champions League spot. We literally cannot. We have nothing. I mean, I know we've said we have very little to play for. We have really nothing to play for at this point. I want everyone to come out of this match fit and not any weird injuries. No more, like what happened to Tarkowski late on. We don't need any of that on Sunday. But as far as going into the next stadium and going into what I'm going to start manifesting this as the name, but going into the HD next season. I think that, and Les and I have talked a lot about this on Kickabout, which we are, by the way, recording on Sunday. We're going to record a season-ending episode on Sunday. It'll probably be out Tuesday. But we talked a lot about how the move to Bramley Moore, to the HD, is one that is going to afford us an opportunity to do the thing that we have constantly talked about over the years, but it's always just been a thing you say that hasn't really meant much. But my God, guys, this is our turn the page moment, okay? That does not mean, ignoring everything that came before now. That does not mean we forget Goodison. But and Les and I talked a lot about this, that what an opportunity to retire Everton that. You know what I mean? I think that is, culturally, I've spent a lot of time in Liverpool. I've got buddies. I've got lots of friends there. I've been been at a friend's wedding, a year ago. I feel like, as an American, I have a pretty decent understanding of the culture, and that culture will always include dark humor and cynicism. And I never want to steal that from you guys. But what I would say is that in terms of a moment, we have a new stadium. And like we talked about with Goodison, what that stadium ultimately is yet to be written, and it's going to be written by us. And we are the ones, especially this generation, the first people moving into it, who really get to set the tone for what Bramley Moore, the HD, becomes in the future, and how it is both tied to the Everton that we have always been, but can also be something new and different, and hopefully even a little bit better, right? And so I believe that, it'd be one thing if we were moving into the stadium under Mashiri, or we were moving into the stadium after having been relegated, or, just being still in a lot of trouble. But we really have gotten a real reset in a lot of ways. Now, I look forward to scrutinizing and stressing out again in a very good, fun way over summer transfers. But generally speaking, if we bring this team back and make a few relatively smart and sound decisions, this ought to be a competitive, fun team to get behind. And that's all we've really wanted. One where we didn't have to face an existential crisis, one where I don't have to try to talk about finance and accounting and the fiduciary mismanagement of something. Like I don't want to have those conversations anymore. What's it going to be like to just be a fan of a football team and talk about football as 95% of the conversation moving forward? That's what I'm excited about. And to me, when you ask what is the future, what does the future hold for us moving to Bramley Moore? I think that the future is the opportunity to make it about football again in a way that we have not been able to in a long time. And I think that you saw on Sunday that the collective power, and I mean that truly, the collective power and history and cachet and whatever you want to call it of our fan base, that energy can be channeled into something that can truly become special. That does not mean it's going to happen next season or even the season after that. I am content to build a real foundation and get there when we get there. Hopefully when we get there is not 10 years from now, but I think that there's a real opportunity here to just have, smart ownership, make good sound decisions. And, as much as the Premier League has felt like a closed shop at the top, I do think if there has been some softening in terms of parity within this league, you're starting to see it on the fringes of the Champions League and those Europa spots. Like, we've seen it with Forest and we've seen it with Villa. Like, Everton do not have to be 10 years away. It felt like we were 5, 10, 20 years away not that long ago. Now it feels like we are a couple of good seasons and a few good windows and some, a little bit of fortune going our way into actually having something that can get us truly excited about stuff that goes beyond nostalgia and memories and can be about something new that we get to define, that we get to be the authors of. I'm excited about that. I cannot believe I am speaking with this much positivity about Everton on an Everton podcast, but you've caught me on the right day, Warren. I have gotten emotional about my experiences there and what Goodison means, but I also think that the value of what we took away on Sunday can't just be something that is lost in the ether. It has to be something that we both take with us and we build upon into the Everton of now and the future. And we're going to be the authors of that. So for me, I'm so excited. I can't wait to get to the new stadium. My brother and I are planning a trip probably for next spring to get over. Can't wait. I'm so excited.
I'm so thrilled to hear that you're going to not just leave your final moments as being an Everton fan as that Tottenham game. You will be coming to the new stadium. And I love the way you're pronouncing it as the HT, by the way. I think that might take off as well. So well done.
I'm just going to keep saying,
but yeah, as you said,
I'm going to manifest it, Warren. I'm going to manifest it.
It'll take off certainly on this show anyway. But yeah, what you said about the crowd and harnessing that and taking it to Goodison. I mean, Matt Jones mentioned this on the byline, I think, and one of the themes of Sunday that everybody I had the pleasure of talking to all said, just imagine if we were good. This is what we've got now. Imagine if we were good. And listen, when we win something, believe me, it's going to be a celebration like no other, because that was for the team saying goodbye to a stadium. What about the fans when they see that trophy eventually being lifted again by whoever the captain is at the time? Hopefully that'll come sooner rather than later. We will leave it there. My thanks to Rob and Pete for joining me tonight on the weekly and going over what's been an incredibly emotional week. And I think a week that we've all loved, and we've all loved seeing everything, and we've all felt so amazing about Sunday, but one that has ultimately been a very sad one. But as Rob has really well pointed out there, there's an opportunity for us to move on and to hope and want and wish for better. And I'm sure good times are ahead of us. We've got lots coming up, obviously, as usual, on the Blue Room. There'll be another post-match to that insignificant game against Newcastle, which hopefully we can spoil their Champions League party on Sunday. There'll be another Blue Monday next Monday, and obviously the brilliant byline. And then keep listening to us over the summer, because it's going to be, as we've commented on loads of times, one of the busiest, most hectic, potentially most exciting summers in Everton's history, and all the build-up to moving to that new ground. It's only 2 months away, moving to the HD. And it's going to come thick, it's going to come fast, and we will be there all building up to it all throughout the summer. So there's lots of content. When the season stops, we don't. We'll be here every week, still bringing you all that top-notch Blue Room content that we have. So keep us listening, however you get us, on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, whatever it might be. If you're watching us on YouTube, give us a like and a subscribe. Every little bit helps. And give us any of the comments you'd like to on Twitter or on Spotify or on YouTube as well. We love interacting with each and every one of you who listen. Thank you very much. We'll speak to you soon, and up those toffees.